monthly activity users sending visual text content for more than 6 hours per day. So on average, if you ask how much people are engaged in social media, you will see almost 6 to 7 hours. We all are busy in sending some information on social media, and that information is actually in the form of either the images or the videos, or it could be in the form of text and so on and so on. So looking at this, if you look at how much data get exchanged per day, you will see 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is generated per day across the world. Now, quintillion is 10 to the power 18 bytes. So about 2.5 into 10 to the power 18 bytes data is generated per day. If you want, this data should be in moving either in some or the other form, then we require a sustained data rate across the world of about 300 terabits per second. That's the kind of data rate which is required to meet today's data transfer requirement. So, with this requirement, then one can pose simple questions. So let us say that then I want some kind of a medium or channel on which I would like to send this huge capacity information as faithfully as possible. So I go to my basic Shannon's channel capacity theorem, and I ask, what is the channel capacity? And channel capacity depends upon the bandwidth, which is B, and it is logarithm of 1 plus S by N, which is signal to noise ratio. So for a high capacity channel, you require two quantities in the channel. You require very large bandwidth, and you also require a very high signal to noise ratio, right? One can of course trade in one for other a little bit, but you require actually both in a given system. Now, when I look at this, so in these two parameters, when I look at, these are the fundamental parameters for a communication system. Then one is the bandwidth, and one would see that any electronic system which you take, the bandwidth is almost proportional to the frequency of operation, more or less. So if I'm having a frequency of operation, let us say 1 gigahertz, I get certain bandwidth which could be few percent of that. If I increase that bandwidth, the frequency of operation by 4 orders of magnitude to optical frequencies, my bandwidth also will go in the same proportion, because the percentage bandwidth remains more or less same. And that is the reason the optical domain seems to be attractive, because when I go from electronic domain, which is up to microwave or millimeter wave, when I go to the higher frequencies, and suddenly if I make a jump to the optical domain, which is 4 orders of magnitude higher than the microwave band, then I will be able to get a bandwidth which is typically 4 orders of magnitude higher than that. Right? That was one of the attraction to go for the optical communication. Second thing, when we talk about the second parameter, which is signal to noise ratio, the signal to noise ratio, we have the signal and noise. And noise normally is generated by some independent the parameters. It could be by environment, it could be by the electronic systems, and so on and so on. And also the noise is independent of the signal, and it is not too much in your control. So if you want to improve signal to noise ratio, then what you have to do is you have to increase the power. Then only signal to noise ratio will be improved. And this has to happen on the receiving side when you detect the signal, when you try to degenerate the signal which you have received. So now the transmitting power also is limited. If you want to have a good signal to noise ratio, and if the noise is independent of the signal, the only way to get that is to have a medium which will have as low loss as possible, so that when I receive the signal has still significant strength, so signal to noise ratio is very, very high. So that means from the Shannon's capacity theorem, when I look at the requirement of the high data transmission capability, I require a channel which should have a very large bandwidth, and it should have as low loss as possible. Right? That is the requirement, and that's where actually the thing started when the optical communication came in picture in mid 60s. The two fundamental questions which were asked at that time, which was in mid 60s, that do we have a medium which is very low loss and which has a very large bandwidth? And the simple experiment showed that if you use the medium which was available that time, the glass, if the glass could be purified, then you could have a very large bandwidth with the glass. At the same time, you will have an extremely low loss with this medium glass. Second thing which was there is that question which was required was, do we have a proper light sources which can transmit high speed information? Again, this question looks very trivial because the sources which we have abundant, which are optical sources, right from the sun to your light bulbs to LEDs, many things are there with you. So this question was relevant because the sources which are available for light, these sources cannot be modulated at very high data rate. That means they cannot transfer very high information. They can generate light, but this cannot transmit very high information. And that problem was solved essentially by invention of lasers. And both the things more or less happened simultaneously in mid-60s. And that's where this combination actually made a start in the optical communication. So when I look at the glass, you will see that I should give a credit for the optical communication to two legendary people, who are supposed to be the founders of optical communication. One, of course, is Dr. Narendra Singh Kapani. He's called the father of fiber optics. He invented fiber optics. He designed, did all theoretical calculations, theoretical modeling of optical fibers, established lots of papers, wrote books, in mid 60s and 70s. The other person who made use of optical fibers for communication purposes, and that is Charles Kao, who got Nobel Prize in 2008, for invention of optical fiber. So though the Kao was not the inventor of optical fiber, Kao actually was a user of optical fiber for telecommunication. Right? The founder was the Narendra Kapani, but still the Nobel Prize was given to Charles Kao because the impact of optical fiber was realized only after the internet came, and without the backbone like optical fiber, the internet would have never been successful. So when you look at the social impact of optical fiber, I think that came because of the application of optical fiber for communication. Though the guiding of light was demonstrated by Kapani, right, much before this activities which came into telecommunication. Nevertheless, these two people you should remember when we talk about the optical fiber communication. Now, when I look at the loss profile of glass, you will see that initially when in 60s, when the glass was tested for its loss performance, it had multiple windows which were there. So one window which was there, which was around 800 nanometer. Second window which was there around 1300 nanometer. Third window which was there around 1550 nanometer. And these are the windows, that means where the loss was very, very low. So the loss around 800 nanometer was around 3 dB per kilometer. 1310 nanometer is about 0.2 dB, 0.3 dB per kilometer. 1.5 nanometer, it was about 1.2 dB, 0.12 dB per kilometer, and so on and so on. So you see that this loss which was measured that time, and the lasers which were invented at that time, they were all gallium arsenide based. And gallium arsenide gives you intrinsically a radiation at red color, which is infrared, which is 980 nanometer. So the combination of this first window, which we call the first window of optical communication, which came in 80s, because the combination of this low loss window was available that time, and the lasers were available which were gallium arsenide. That's how the optical communication started. Then later on, of course, there was Can people put their mics off, please?
Shashikant ji, please mute your mic.
Okay. So with this now, question was, when you are having this bandwidth which is there, so first of all, you ask a question. If I take the windows which are in optical communication, each window is typically of about 120 nanometer. And 120 nanometer, if you translate to the gigahertz for measurement of bandwidth, this will turn out to be about 15 terahertz bandwidth, each window of optical communication. So if you take both the windows, which is in 1310 nanometer and 1550 nanometer, they together will be about 30 terahertz bandwidth available on a single optical fiber. Question is, if I want to access this bandwidth, the bandwidth can be accessed either in time domain or it can be accessed in frequency domain. But if I want to access this bandwidth in time domain, then I have to generate the data pulses, which are approximately 1 over of this bandwidth. So if I take 1 upon 30 terahash and I ask a question, how much is the pulse duration which I will generate? You will see that you will require pulses typically of the order of 0.07 picosecond duration. This generation of pulses is not very easy, right? Maybe by using bulk optics and the high power lasers, you will be able to do that. But when I go for normal semiconductor lasers, you will not be able to generate this kind of electronic pulse. Right? Maximum pulse rate you can generate probably is 10 Gbps now, more or less routine. You can go to 30 Gbps, maybe 50, 60 Gbps. But beyond that, generation of these pulses at optical frequencies become difficult. So what that means is these pulses cannot be generated, or this bandwidth cannot be accessed in time domain. Right? There is another problem that even if you could generate these pulses which are of that narrow width, which is 0.07 picosecond, then these pulses will be limited what is called the dispersion on optical fiber. And what is dispersion? Dispersion is a phenomena which is the pulse broadening phenomenon. Now to understand that, first understand what the optical fiber is. So the optical fiber, as we all know, this is a solid glass rod which is made of a core surrounded by another glass shell, which is what is called cladding. And the core diameter could vary between 8 to 10 micrometer for a single mode optical fiber, where the cladding diameter is standardized to 125 micrometer. And then of course you have these protective sheets, which could be called plastic buffers or jackets, so that you can make the fiber in the form of a cable. The refractive index difference between the core and the cladding is very, very small, which is only of the order of about 10 to the power minus 3, right? And the light is guided inside the optical fiber core by multiple reflection, what is called total internal reflection. But actually, if you go to analysis of the optical fiber, you will find that the ray model breaks down when you go to single mode optical fiber. Nevertheless, we can still say that the light is getting guided inside the core by phenomena similar to the total internal reflection phenomena, and the light can propagate inside this over long distance without much attenuation. However, when the light is propagating, the light doesn't propagate in a simple constant kind of the plane in the uniform intensity or something like that. The light, when it goes inside the optical fiber, since the diameter of the optical fiber is very small, and the small is, that means they are now becoming very comparable to the wavelength. So if I am operating, let us say in 1550 nanometer, the wavelength is about 1.5 micrometer. The diameter of the optical fiber is about 8 micrometer or something like that. That means now the size of the optical fiber is not very large compared to the wavelength. What that means is that the light now cannot be treated like a uniform plane wave, right? As normally the light is treated in the open medium. So light has to be treated like an electromagnetic wave guided inside the structure, which is like a waveguide, which we call a dielectric wave. And when the light goes inside the structure, then the light travels in this intensity patterns, form of intensity patterns, which are called the modes of the optical fiber. So the very first one which you see here, this is the mode which is the lowest order mode, and then you can have the next mode and next mode and next mode, and these are the higher order mode which can propagate. So depending upon the diameter of the core, you can have multiple modes propagating inside the optical fiber. Or if you make the diameter small to about 8 to 10 micrometer, then only single mode or 1 or 2 modes will propagate inside the optical fiber. So when light goes inside the optical fiber, it propagates in the form of mode, and here the nomenclature is these are the linearly polarized mode, which we can get under the approximation what is called the weakly guiding approximation. And many of you want to work on that, would be familiar with it. So when these modes travel inside the optical fiber, one of the phenomena which sort of distorts the signal is what is called the dispersion. And what is dispersion? Dispersion is a pulse broadening phenomenon. So when you launch a pulse inside the optical fiber, which is like here, at the end of the optical fiber, the pulse will be broadened in time. So you will get a much wider pulse, when you receive it. Of course, if there's a single pulse sent, there is no issue. You got to still get the one pulse, and you will be happy with it. But the problem is, you are going to, when you send the data, you are going to send multiple pulses. And when the multiple pulses are sent on this, if each pulse starts broadening, then after certain distance, these pulses will start overlapping with each other, or the data pulse identities will be lost, and the data will be lost. So you see that the broadening of the pulse is proportional to the distance. It is also proportional to the spectral width of the source. And that will become clear in a minute when we talk about that. So data rate is inversely proportional to the pulse width, right? And so once you have that, the figure of merit which you can define for optical fiber is what is called the data rate distance product. So you can have a very high data rate sent on a short distance, or you can have a low data rate sent over a very long distance, because this product, which is a figure of merit for an optical fiber. Right? So even if you had generated the TDM pulses very narrow, you will see that because of this dispersion phenomenon, the pulses will broaden very quickly on optical fiber, and you will not be able to send the data over a very long distance. Right? So that is one of the limitation which you get. Second interesting thing which is there for the optical communication is the nature of the signal which we send in optical communication. So let us say, suppose I want to compare my optical communication with electronic communication or RF communication. If somebody had designed an RF system, let us say I'm working at 1 gigahertz RF communication, and I want to send, let us say, some video signal, and the video signal has a bandwidth, let us say, some 1 megahertz, and the carrier frequency is 1 gigahertz. Right? What I can do is I can modulate my carrier with this, but the carrier bandwidth, when we talk about, we never ask a question, what is the bandwidth of the carrier? Right? So when I say 1 gigahertz, I assume that this is almost 1 gigahertz and hardly any bandwidth is there for that. Or what it means is the bandwidth of the carrier itself is much smaller compared to the bandwidth which you wanted to transmit in the form of modulating signal. Right? So if I'm using a carrier whose spectral width or carrier width is very narrow compared to your modulating signal, right? You can modulate it, you can see sidebands, you can do demodulation on the other side, and so on and so on. That is the scenario on radio frequency. When I go to optical frequency, you have a sources like a laser or LEDs. So let us take even a good quality laser, and you ask what is the spectral width of a laser. So spectral width of a typical semiconductor laser would be about 1 to 2 nanometer, and each nanometer, when you convert into frequency, you will see that each nanometer turns out to be about 130 to 140 gigahertz. So if the 2 nanometer laser source, if I take, then the spectral width of the laser itself will be about 200 gigahertz. The data which I want to send has a width of only a few megahertz, could be a few tens of megahertz, right? So what that means is, now for optical communication, the carrier spectral width is very large, and modulating signal spectral width is much narrower compared to the carrier spectral. This is the scenario which is exactly opposite of RF frequency. So what that means is, even if whatever data I am transmitting, even if I increase the data rate even by a factor of 4 or 5, the total bandwidth requirement of the optical signal is not going to change, because the bandwidth is decided only by the carrier of the frequency and not by the modulating signal. And that is the reason the dispersion will not be able to change by reducing the data rate or something like that. So this is the difference between the RF communication and optical communication, right? So with this in mind, then we have to see that the dispersion, which is the pulse broadening phenomena which you see on optical fiber, it comes from because of 3 things. One is intrinsically the material is dispersive, and glass is a very dispersive medium. We know that from our very high school knowledge, that whenever you use a prism or lens, the different colors get diffracted in different directions. And why that happens? Because the refractive index of the glass is different at different frequencies. And since the refractive index is different, the velocity is different. If the velocity is different, dispersion is there in the glass. So material is a dispersive medium. And this dispersion is not in our control. This is God given. So as long as you are using material like glass, the dispersion is going to be present. Second dispersion, which we call as the waveguide dispersion, this comes because you have made the glass in the form of a very fine fiber, like, or a dielectric waveguide. And now, depending upon the dielectric waveguide and its refractive index profile, this dispersion can be changed, it can be manipulated, right? So this is dispersion which is to some extent in control of the designer, right, who designed the optical fiber. And third dispersion, of course, comes is what is called polarization mode dispersion, which comes because of the fabrication inaccuracy, that the circular fiber will be never perfectly circular. It will be a little elliptical, and the ellipticity may change, along the length of the fiber. And because of that, you see the polarization will keep on changing as the signal travels on the optical fiber. And then finally, of course, if you are having more than one mode traveling on optical fiber, then each mode will travel with its own velocity, and you will have a dispersion which is coming because of multimode propagation on the optical fiber. So let us not worry multimodal at this point, because most of the high-speed communication links use a single mode optical fiber. So the first three, polarization, the material dispersion, the waveguide dispersion, and polarization mode dispersion, these three are going to be present in any of the single mode optical fiber communication. Right? So that's what is going to be there. So if I look at the dispersion characteristic, you will see that the material dispersion is given by this red line. The blue line is showing you the waveguide dispersion, and the total dispersion is given by this violet line, right, which is a combination of these two. So what I see from here is that the total dispersion which I see, this total dispersion is almost zero at 1310 nanometers. And that is the interesting wavelength, because at that location, even if the loss is not absolute minimum, the dispersion is almost zero. That means in that window, you will be able to transmit the highest possible data rate. And that's the reason the second window of what we call of optical communication, started in 1310 nanometers. So once that was available, then of course, in the meantime, the people started using the second window, which is 1550 nanometer window also, but there the dispersion was not zero. So by manipulating the refractive index profiles, which are shown in the right side here on the slide, you have got a very good control today on the refractive index profiles. So imagine now that this variation which I am showing you of refractive index, this is the range of this is only 10 to the power minus 3. That much is the change in refractive index. And the width of this function is only about 8 to 10 micrometer. But today technology allows you to control the refractive index profile to great accuracy over the length of fiber, which is of hundreds of kilometers, right? And can maintain the characteristic of optical fiber. But when this was given, then of course the natural choice was to shift the zero dispersion point to 1550 nanometer, so that we can have a lowest possible loss on optical fiber, and we can have the highest possible data rate also, because the dispersion also can be zero. One interesting point to note at this point is that the dispersion, this plot which you see here, the dispersion can be positive or negative. But don't be under impression that the negative dispersion means the narrowing of the pulse. The dispersion, as we said, is the broadening of a pulse. So negative dispersion doesn't mean it's the narrowing of the pulse. However, what that means is, if the pulse was already broadened by positive dispersion, then by using negative dispersion, you can undo that broadening, which was there in the pulse because of positive dispersion. So negative dispersion or positive dispersion, if you look them individually, both of them are going to give you only broadening of the pulse. But when you have a combination of these two, then these two dispersions can nullify each other and can help you in maintaining the pulse width along the length of the optical fiber. So that's what happens on the dispersion. So with this then, if you look at the evolution of optical networks, one can now talk about the first generation network, second generation network, the third generation network, and so on. So first generation network, which was in 70s and 80s, which was in 850 nanometer. It used the fiber, which was a thick fiber, which we call as the graded index optical fiber, which was a multimode fiber. The distances were not very large, right? So the capacity, which is dispersed distance, the product, bandwidth product, if you look at, it had only about 1 gigabits per second kilometer. So if you wanted to send a data over 1 kilometer, you would not be able to send the data more than 1 gigabits per second. Or if you wanted to send the data over 10 kilometers, the data rate will be only about 100 Mbps. That's the kind of thing which was there in 70s and 80s. Then the second generation came, where the fiber became single mode, and the 1310 nanometer window was used. And this is what is called a second generation kind of data. And the data rate, of course, increased by almost factor of 10. This is the figure of merit, which was the bandwidth distance product, right? And the capacity increased by factor of 10. By the time we came to 80s and mid 80s and something like that, we were in third generation, and where fiber was the dispersion shifted fiber, and the window which was becoming more dominant, which was the 1550 nanometer. And that's where actually the data rate became, this parameter became almost 1000 gigabits per second kilometer. So you could send 1 gigabits data over 1000 kilometers without any dispersion or distortion, or easily up to 100 kilometers you can send 10 Gbps data, right, without signal distortion. And that was a very, very good sort of a system, because 10 Gbps data sent over 100 kilometers is a very good kind of system as far as the communication system is concerned. However, in all these systems, first generation or second generation or third generation, the data was always in the binary form. That means the data was generated electronically in bits, which were only 0, 1 bits. The modulations which were used were only simple amplitude modulation, what we call the intensity modulation. And the data was time division multiplex in electronic domain. And then finally it was converted into optical domain, right? And the things were sent from one point to another. And of course, the standard for multiplexing came in optical domain, which we call SONET or SDH, right, depending upon whether you are in the Northern America or you are in Europe, right, or the different parts of the country. But all these standards are essentially the time domain multiplexing signals in electronic domain. So if I look at up to first to third generation communication system, their time division multiplex data, right, got generated electronically. It was converted into optical pulses, and then it was sent on the optical fiber, which was received on the other side and demultiplexed electronically, and then routed electronically at different locations. For two-way communication, of course, there were two fibers used, one for going forward, one for going backward, and so on and so on. And any of the windows, right, could be used, either 1310 nanometer window or 1550 nanometer window. And then one developed the standards, which we call are the different multiplexing rates. So in optical domain, we should call them, we call them OC, right, optical carrier, 3, 12, 48, 192, or for the synchronous transmission mode, we call them 1, 4, 16, 64, right? And OC3 is the thing where SDH and SONET comes common, right, which is a rate of 155.52 Mbps per second. So these are some of the standards which came in optical communication, right, which were not really the optical technology. The technology was still electronics technology, multiplexing was still electronics. Only thing is, this finally, when the multiplex data was generated, that was converted into optical domain, and the optical pulses were sent on the optical fiber, because the fiber was a more convenient medium which had a low loss and a high band. Right? So that's what actually was done in the up to first to third generation. Then, so if I look at a simple system at that point of time, you will see that there was a transmitter, right? And when the signal was sent on the optical fiber, right, whenever signal deteriorated or signal to noise ratio deteriorated, you put a device, what is called a repeater, which was the regeneration of the signal. You could clean the signal electronically, again modulate, put on the optical fiber, and so on and so on. So signals were sent over long distances by using multiple repeaters. Now, if you consider a low dispersion fiber, like a dispersion shifted fiber or something like that, and if you take a standard, the BER rate, which you require for optical communication, which is 10 to the power minus 9, you will see that most of the links are power limited. What that means is, over a distance over which the signal to noise ratio becomes unacceptable, the pulses are still not distorted enough because of dispersion. So ideally, the pulses were still okay, only the noise started dominating, and because of that, I had to regenerate my signal and then again convert into optical domain and send it, so a repeater was required at that distance. This distance typically was of the length about 80 to 100 kilometers. So in those links, the repeater spacing was typically about 80 to 100 kilometers, right? Because signal to noise ratio was not accepted. But if you look at a communication system, electronic communication system, let us say, whenever you are having a signal to noise ratio, and if the data is not distorted, we never put repeaters there. We normally put simple amplifier there because you can always regenerate or amplify the signal by using appropriate amplifier. Only thing is, earlier the proper amplifiers were not available, and because of that you have to regenerate the data by using repeaters. The revolutionary device which came is what is called an optical amplifier, right? Which can replace the repeaters, and that amplifier was what is called the erbium doped fiber amplifier. And this amplifier actually came in the window, right, which is in 1550 nanometers. So I'll come back into that. So when these amplifiers came, this is late 80s and 90s, the fourth generation optical communication system, what we call, it started introducing many advanced level techniques into communication. Not only getting the data in form of bits, converting into optical and sending it. So one of the things which started happening is what is called dispersion management. That means the data which is dispersed, rather than accepting the dispersed data or broadened data on the receiving side, can the pulses be compressed back by using some technique? And this is the phenomena what is called a dispersion compensation. So as I mentioned, if you use normal fiber, the pulse will broaden, let us say, because of positive dispersion. Suppose I introduce a fiber which has a negative dispersion, then the pulse can be again compressed back because the negative dispersion can nullify this positive dispersion. And this technique can be used without converting the data into electronic domain for again regenerating the data. So this is not regeneration. It is just an optical domain, you are compressing the data back, right, and generating again the clean pulse. This can also be done by using devices which are very innovative devices, which are based on the fiber Bragg grating. Or you can do this kind of regeneration or cleaning of the data by electronic equalization. So various techniques started coming in for regenerating the data or compressing the pulses which were distorted because of the dispersion. Second thing we mentioned is the optical amplifiers came, and because of that the regeneration or amplification of the signal became easy rather than converting the signal into electronics and regenerating. And that gave essentially rise to the new technology, which is what is called the wavelength division multiplexing technology. So fourth generation, when we look at these new things which happen. So when I look at EDFA, the EDFA is a very novel amplifier. First of all, this amplifier is fiber based. That means whatever normal fiber you are using, if you take a small piece of that fiber and dope the core of that fiber with erbium, this fiber can become an active medium which can amplify the light at 1550 nanometer. So this medium can be pumped by a laser which could be 980 or 1480 nanometer, and then along with the pump, when you put a signal which is 1550 nanometer, then signal can be amplified by passing through about 30 to 40 meter length of this fiber. So first of all, this amplifier is a very miniaturized version of optical fiber. So secondly, it is completely compatible with optical fiber. And thirdly, it can give you a very high gain, about 20-30 dB, over a large bandwidth of 1530 to 1570 nanometer, right? Which is about 40 nanometer kind of band simultaneously can get amplified into this. So this was the amplifier which was one of the transformative technologies which enhanced the optical communication capacity by manifold in 90. So this is one technology which came. When this technology came, and when you are having a large bandwidth available, and at the same time the laser technology also got improved, that means the lasers also can be created at multiple wavelengths and with a very narrow spacing of their frequencies or wavelengths. There was no reason to really operate the optical communication one carrier in one window. So earlier as I mentioned, you could use the carrier either in 1310 nanometer or you could use 1550 nanometer. But now since you are having a bandwidth available of 40 nanometer, and if the multiple lasers can be created, which could have a separation of, let us say, 1 nanometer, So ideally, I will be able to create optical 40 channels in this, and each channel can be modulated in time domain multiplexing with OC, whatever we are talking about, so 10 gigabits per second. So now, instead of now increasing the data rate in time domain, this WDM technology became more and more attractive and viable because you had a large bandwidth available in optical fiber in bandwidth. You also had a laser technology available to you, right, which could generate the multiple carriers in optical domain. And each carrier then can be modulated with the time division multiplex data. So the wavelength division multiplexing, which is similar to what we have frequency division multiplexing in RF domain or radio domain. So here also multiple carriers are used, and each carrier actually is carrying different kind of data. So the things were then standardized. You could use 8 wavelengths per fiber, and or multiple 32, 64, depending upon the capacity and the channel separation which you can have. You can really have the multiple carriers transmitted simultaneously in a single mode optical fiber. At the same time, you could use different wavelengths for propagation in different directions. That means now you don't require different fibers for carrying forward traffic and backward traffic, right? You can use only multiple wavelengths. So this technology, which was a much easier technology to access the bandwidth compared to accessing bandwidth in time domain, that became really very attractive, right, in 90. So what supported WDM? The lasers had multiple wavelengths, the dispersion flattened fibers because you could have a large window created by the fiber, wideband optical amplifier, which is EDFA, and then of course there were a lot of photonic integrated circuit which came in, right, and optical functions could be performed in the optical domain directly, like filtering, routing, multiplexing, switching. So one could think of all the functions which people used to do earlier electronically, now in optical domain themselves. And then the concept of what is called the all optical networks came in, right, where you let the data flow in the optical form, optical pulses form, as long as you want it, not because systemically you would generate the data into electronic, right? For routing or filtering, you don't have to convert to electronic. You can route in optical domain directly. So unless you require data to be converted into electronic form, you don't have to convert, right? So the all optical network could really route, switch the data directly in the optical domain. That's what actually happened in 90, right? The fourth generation. And then of course, once the multiple wavelength transmission came, the wavelength or the optical band was standardized, and the band which was around 1550 nanometer, that band now we call it the C band. But there are different bands, which are S band, which is 1480 to 1530 nanometer. There's L band, which is beyond 1550, which is 1570 to 1610 nanometer. There is a S plus band, which is 1450 to 1480 nanometers, and so on and so on. And also what ITU did, they also standardized the channel separation for WDM laser line width. So they said the channel can be separated by 0.8 nanometer, which if you see in terms of frequency, that will be approximately 100 gigahertz kind of separation. So now the optical channels could be separated 100 gigahertz, and each channel could be modulated with about 10 Gbps per second, right? So in C band, if you look at which is 40 nanometer, you will see about 40 channels can be transmitted. So the effective transmission capacity of optical fiber increased to 400 Gbps per second. If you want to get a feel for this number, this is equivalent to saying we can transmit 1 lakh TV channels, right, about 4 megahertz bandwidth simultaneously inside a single mode optical fiber. That's the capacity which the fiber could create by using WDM technology. Later on, of course, the laser technology also became much more stable. So the line width or the channel separation was reduced to 0.4 nanometer, which is 50 gigahertz, 0.4 nanometer. And the separation is 40 Gbps per channel. And so you could get about 80 times more capacity. So the capacity of the single mode optical fiber essentially increased to about 30 terabits per second. So if I combine the L band and S band both, we can have about 11 terabits per second capacity inside a single mode optical fiber. Right? That's the capacity which could be generated once the WDM technology came. Once this happened now, and the capacity seemed to be getting saturated in about 10 terabits per second, something like that, then the next generation of the optical communication system came. And what was the major change which took place? That till the fourth generation, though the data was getting transmitted either in the multiple optical channels and so on, the data was still in the binary format. The modulation format which was used, it was still the bits which was 0 and 1 bit. Right? There was no advance, the communication data formats were used. So once the channel capacity had to be increased by using some other means, the laser technology, which has become very fine now, and the spectral width of the laser reduced significantly by using the lasers like the distributed feedback lasers and so on and so on, one could now think of different modulation formats and not only simply switching on and off kind of format. So all the advanced format which we use in normal communication, like the frequency shift keying or phase shift keying or amplitude shift keying or QM or QPSK, all kinds of things now could be realized, right, or they became realizable since the laser technology gave you a very thin spectral line width lasers. And then, of course, one could also have the different polarization which could be transmitted, in the optical fiber. So by using this different modulation format, right, you can use the QPSK or 16 COM or those kind of format. Now the figure of merit for optical communication also became essentially the spectral efficiency as we use for normal digital communication, and that is bits per second per hertz, right? And signal processing electronically could be done when the bits are processed. So in 2011, the 640 WDM channel transmission was demonstrated with a channel spacing of 12.5 gigahertz. That means each channel is separated, a laser is separated by 12.5 gigahertz. 107 Gbps with two polarization data, right, was transmitted by each of the spectral line over a distance of 320 kilometers. So effectively 64 terabits per second of data was transmitted by using this 640 DWDM channels by using this advanced modulation format. So if I look at spectral efficiency, you will see that after the 90s, when the coherent communication came, that means this different modulation formats started getting used, right? The spectral efficiency increased by almost factor of 10, right? From about 2000 to about 2010. So in 10 years, spectral efficiency could be in the factor of 10. Right? And one can show that even if you go further, there is a capacity limit, right, which is about 20, 30 sort of bits per second kind of efficiency, right, that one could achieve. And I'm going to come in a minute why that limit comes there. But by using different formats in fifth generation optical communication system, one could enhance the capacity of the optical communication by a factor of 10 by using same single mode kind of optical fiber. So why fiber has this capacity limit? So first of all, if you look at the channel's capacity formula, I know that it is bandwidth multiplied by the logarithm of 1 plus signal to noise ratio. So from that formula, it looks, if I go on increasing signal to noise ratio, I should be able to increase the capacity indefinitely. There should not be any limit. And that might happen for the radio frequencies also. However, when I go to optical domain, you will see there is something interesting happening. And that is that I increase the power of the signal, and especially in WDM kind of environment, the core diameter of the optical fiber is very, very small. When the large number of channels starts propagating inside the fiber, the light intensity increases significantly inside the core. And then it becomes so large that the medium glass does not remain linear. What does it mean? It means that now the intensity of light which is inside the core of the fiber modifies the characteristics of optical fiber. It changes the refractive index of the optical fiber. Right? And because of this, then the propagation characteristic of the light changes, and because of that, the pulse distortion change, right, or the signal quality change. So now by increasing the power inside the optical fiber, the capacity cannot be improved because the nonlinear effects essentially start distorting the signal. So the enhancing capacity with increasing power, if a Shannon capacity, Shannon point of view is true, but when it comes to optical fiber, this is not true because there are nonlinear effects that are going to be there in optical fiber. So there is always an optimum SNR, right, for which you can get the best spectral efficiency. And it is shown here for 1000 kilometers. If you go to C band, right, with a 100 nanometer bandwidth, you will see a 12.5 terahertz capacity you can send, right, and the spectral efficiency of 8 bits per second per hertz can be realized, right, with two polarization that will give you a capacity of about 200 terabits per second. That's the maximum capacity you can achieve over a distance of 1000 kilometers. Right? So that is something which has sort of happened in after 2010, right? And people started really reaching to those kind of limits till you reach to the fiber to the nonlinear sort of thing. There are many systems which are deployed across the world, which are under the sea kind of systems, right? Because different continents have to be connected by using optical fiber, right? So there are these cables which are transatlantic cables. There are the cables which are Asia-America cables, right? And fiber which are going all over, right? All over the globe, connecting different countries, and they are the undersea kind of cable. When you come to India, the Prime Minister inaugurated the Chennai Andaman cable in August 2020, and this is going to have a length of 2,300 kilometers, right? And it will establish a link between Chennai and Andaman Nicobar Island. The Jio is going to have announced actually two big systems for optical communication, one going towards the Europe and one going towards Asia. So IIX is going towards Asia and IEX is going towards Europe, and each one is going to be having a capacity of about 200 terabits per second, and the total fiber length for which this will be about 16,000 kilometers. So, India also is connected very well, right, with the other advanced countries with a very high capacity optical communication channels. So that was the fifth generation communication system, right, which happened in the last decade. Now with this, the single capacity of the single fiber capacity is getting saturated. So modulations have been taken care of, polarization has been taken care of, right? All the things which you wanted to do with single mode optical fiber are actually getting saturated, is exhausted. But the capacity still has to be increased because with the internet, the requirement of the bandwidth is still higher and higher. You have to increase more capacity. So there is no other alternative but to increase the multiple channels for optical communication. And we know for the single mode optical fiber, the capacity is already reached, right, over 200 terabits per second. You will not be able to transmit more than that. What that means is now that if you further want to increase the capacity by using optical fiber, you start using what is called the space division multiplexing, right? Or you can call the mode division multiplexing, or you can call the code division multiplexing. So you have to now explore different dimensions to enhance the capacity of the optical communication. So when I go to space division multiplexing, what does it mean? The space division multiplexing could be in any of these forms. Either you can use multiple fibers. So between the same 2 points, instead of using one fiber, I can lay multiple fibers which are there, and each fiber carry about 200 terabits data. So total capacity can be increased by factor, which is number of the fiber which you are going to use. That is one possibility. Other possibility, you can have the spatial fibers for which the core is common, and there are multiple, the cladding is common, but there are multiple cores which are there. And each core, different laser sources can be connected, right? And the signal can be transmitted on the other side. So this could be multi-core optical fiber which can carry the multi-channel data. The other possibility could be you can have a multi-mode optical fiber and different modes can be transmitted, inside the optical fiber. So earlier when we talked about communication, the multi-mode communication was prohibitive because it was restricting the data rate because of the dispersion. Now we want to use the multi-mode. essentially send the independent information, not the same information on different modes, but different independent informations on different modes. So you can use some kind of mode division multiplexing. So here I'm showing you the intensity patterns for different modes, right? So you can have the one mode, the other mode, the other mode, and each of the mode can be modulated with different data stream, can be transmitted on optical fiber, which is multimode optical fiber. On the receiving side, the different modes are separated by using the techniques which are available, and the data can again be demultiplexed and so on and so on. So in the lectures in the FDP, some speaker may elaborate a little bit more on the mode division multiplexing. I think there is some work going in IIT Madras on mode division multiplexing, and maybe Deepa or somebody might talk about that. So and then we require for this kind of transmission multimodal amplifiers, because now the different modes are going to propagate, and then the amplifiers not only amplify different particular frequency, but the gain for different modes also has to be equalized, so that you don't require multiple amplifiers for different modes, when we transmit the data. And then of course we require what are called the multiplexers and demultiplexers for these modes. So how efficiently the modes can be combined so that they can be put on the optical fiber, and how efficiently they can be again separated out on the receiving side. That is the technology which the multiplexing, demultiplexing technology, and many devices like fiber Bragg devices, or photonic crystal devices, and so on, you will be able to create multiplexers and demultiplexers. So that is the technology which is good. Now, up till now, the fiber was lying in the backbone. So whenever we talked about communication, it was not visible to the common user, right? Because it was in the backbone, the access was always through radio frequency communication. So you have whether the data which is 4G or 3G or 2G, you have Wi-Fi, right? So the communication you always thought is taking place through the radio communication. So the data used to get aggregated, finally create a very large bandwidth time multiplex data which used to go on optical fiber. However, with 5G coming in, and with the 5G requirement, that the latency is going to be less than 1 millisecond, the data traffic is going to be 50 exabyte per month, in the access network. Your peak data rates are going to be 20 Gbps. The available spectrum which you are having in 5G is about 30 gigahertz, and the density of the users with 5G is about 1 million connections per square kilometer. And this is not we are talking only about now the mobile phones. This we are going to talk about the devices which are going to connect, under the 5G, right, in the category of what is called the IoT. So when you have got Internet of Things, or people are even talking about Internet of Everything, then it is not only the mobile phones, but every device, the gadgets inside your house, and various traffic, various things which you talk about. The smart houses, the smart cities, the smart vehicles, the smart mobile phones, the smart gadgets, the smart industry appliances, all of them are going to get connected through this technology. So you require now a very large capacity medium, not only in the backbone, but also you require in the access network. So except the mobility part, which is taken care of by the RF communication, the fiber now has to come almost to the local houses and residences with high capacity, because the houses are now going to connect, the Internet of Things. A lot of gadgets are going to get connected through this. So now the fiber is going to create a network which is something like that, right? And a very dense network of optical fiber will be created, at the access point network, I think something like that. So that's what is going to happen. So fiber is not going to remain only in the backbone, but it is going to come at every access point with a very high capacity. And all these advanced techniques which I talked about will be going to be deployed in the communication which will be there in next couple of years. So these things which you are talking about, we are not talking about too far in future. By 2025, most of the things are going to be deployed right in the practice. So here's a summary slide of this thing which I have taken from NTT Japan, which says how the advancement in optical communication took place. So if you go to 1980, the multiplexing was time division multiplexing. The data rates were about 10 GB capacity fiber per second. By the time you came to about 1990, sorry, my slide is gone. Yeah. So by the time you came to about 1990, the data WDM was there. That capacity could be increased to about 1 terabits per second. By 2000, the capacity went almost factor of 10 again. By 2010, the capacity was almost 10 terabits per second, right? And by the time you came to 2020, we are having a capacity of about 100 terabits per second, right, which is going to be there. And this is going increasing almost 1.4 times per year. That's what is going to happen. So with usage of space division multiplexing technology, mode division multiplexing technology, the capacity is going to go right much beyond, right? And very soon, maybe in next 10 years, you will start seeing the capacity of 1 petabits per second kind of transmission by using this optical networks there. So technologies, some of them are like WDM technologies are very well established. The SDM technology, some of them are at the laboratory stage and are ready to take off. And in the next couple of years, they will be deployed in the system. So the optical fiber in last 30, 40 years have really got a transformation, right, in their capacity. And the capacity is increased from almost 1 gigabits to about 10 petabits per second, kind of transmission across the world. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And if you have any questions, I can answer those questions. Thank you so much, and I can disconnect my slides.
Okay, thank you, sir. So any questions from the audience, please?
Sir, can you share PPT with us?
Maybe I can send it to you. Yeah. Maybe I can. I'll try.
So there
Yeah,
is one
any other
question.
questions?
There is one question from Abhishek Gaur. How to avoid crosstalks in WDM-based optical networks?
Yeah, so that is one of the challenges, of course, because when your channels are very, very closely spaced, and if they are going into an amplifier, which is like a common amplifier, right, the crosstalk certainly becomes one of the issues. So one of the ways to do that is to reduce the crosstalk, to reduce the phase matching between different channels. So one of the things, when you have a dispersion flattened fiber and the dispersion is same for all the channels, so all the channels propagate inside the optical fiber with almost like a phase coherence. And then they have a higher tendency to couple between each other. So deliberately introducing some kind of dispersion in the channel and not making really very low dispersion for all the channels, the crosstalk can be reduced inside in the optical different optical channel. Other possibility, of course, is increasing the channel separation, right? And then the crosstalk can be reduced. But crosstalk is one of the challenges when we talk about the very closely spaced dense WDM system. And that has to be handled only by one of these techniques.
So there is another question from Pankaj Kesri. Which one is better? That is multi-mode fiber or multi-core fiber?
Oh, again, see, multi-mode fiber, when we talk about, you require a different technology actually, because we require now the mode division multiplexing devices. So you require a multiplexer for modes, demultiplexer for modes, and they are still not come to a commercial level. Whereas when we talk about multi-core, the technology is same. It is just you have created multiple cores, so only there will be small coupling. But if you have a separation, physical separation between different cores inside the multi-core fiber, the technology is already available. You can transmit different data by using different cores. So I would say deployment-wise, multi-core is immediately available for usage, whereas the mode division multiplexing may take few years because you will require these devices of multiplexing and demultiplexing. But it is going to come in a couple of years. But at this time, multi-core will be probably more deployable.
Okay, sir, one more question from Yogesh Gupta. How can we compensate higher order displacements?
higher order dispersion. Okay. So the one possibility now people are trying is you can do that in electronic domain. So now the high speed electronic processing is available. So you can get the pulses and you can do equalization actually electronically. So the normal dispersion maybe you can use by using optical means, and the higher order dispersion you can do by the electronic equalizer.
Okay, thank you, sir. So
Sir,
basically,
good
yeah,
morning, sir.
please.
Yes. Sir, I have one question. Can you couple the multi-core fiber with a single mode fibers? Because we are now in existing technology is single mode fibers, the different amplifiers or that. So can you couple the multi-core?
So look at this. First of all, each core, when you look at this multi-core fiber, so each core is like a single mode fiber. So when I'm coupling a data from single mode fiber to a multi-core, one single mode fiber can be coupled to only one core. So I will require a connecting device, right, which will take the data of multiple fibers which are coming in, and each fiber actually will be connected to each of the cores which are there by using this multi-core connect. So that's the technology which will be required for connecting the fiber to the multi-core fiber. So each core is equal to one fiber. There is no connection between one fiber and multiple cores, because each core is like a dedicated single fiber which you have created. All right.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thank you, sir. And definitely you have delivered very insightful lecture, and definitely your lecture will attract many of the young researchers to work in this attractive field that is optical communication. And what the best you can deliver in 1 hour, that is basically we cannot have better than this. And the participants can definitely attend the such wonderful NPTEL lectures that are very detailed and systematically. So thank you, sir, for delivering such a very interactive talk, and we'd like to thank you again, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Namaskar.
Okay, sir. Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
sir.
Namaskar.
And one more information for the participants. So please, now we have the another technical session that is from 3 to 5. Okay, so you're requested to join the same link at 3 p.m. Okay, and if you have any questions, then let us know.
And definitely attendance is there as per the ICT norms. I think some questions
That
are
is
there.
basically,
So all the attendance, everything is there.
yeah, the attendance will be taken automatically from the WebEx. We have the option. Okay, and one more information for the participant. You have to maintain at least 80% of the attendance, and there will be one test after the FDP, that maybe on the last day. So you have to score at least 60% of the marks, right? Then we'll upload the marks and the attendance on the AICT portal, and then AICT people will receive the certificates. Okay. So please take care. Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I want to ask that is there any WhatsApp group, sir? So is there, sir?
So
Kindly send the
as of
link, sir.
now,
Otherwise,
basically, no. As of now, we are not having any WhatsApp group, and I think we don't have much need for the WhatsApp group, as we have fixed the link that will remain same for all the technical sessions, right? So there is no different link for different sessions. So I think there is no need.
And we are replying as soon as we are getting the
and if
mails.
you have-
We are immediately replying that. So I think WhatsApp groups are not necessary, because I think today I got one mail that I have not received, but I have checked that it's already been sent. So if you have any doubt, we can immediately reply. But there is no WhatsApp group for this.
Yeah. And if you have something important to communicate or contact, then basically you can mail to Dr. Vinita and Dr. Me. So you can always mail if you have something. Okay, and as of now, we are not having PPT. Okay, so if sir will share, then definitely we'll share with you. Otherwise, please. And this lecture is online recorded. Okay, so we'll upload it on the YouTube. Okay, so you can have the contents there definitely without any problem. Okay. Yeah, so thank you all.
Thank you,
so
sir.
next session is at 3 p.m. na?